uh, just let me push back a little bit on this one, on China. I mean, the fact is the CCP has expansionist ideas in the Asia Pacific, and America was the only sort of great power over here pushing back at that.
Where
And
are they?
what do you?
Where
Okay,
are they
let me put
compared
it this
with
way. What do
what?
you make? What do
No,
you
no,
make?
no, no. Wait a minute, though. No,
Go ahead.
stop. You're saying they're expansionist. Where are they expanding?
There are expansionist ideas over there. Taiwan is obviously one area as well. So
No, no. Taiwan is part of China.
Welcome back, guys. I just watched an interview between Colonel Macgregor and an Indian journalist. Now, the interviewer came with talking points and Macgregor came with facts. I'm covering a snippet of this conversation, but I've put the entire interview in the description so you can watch it all. Now, let's break down what actually happened, the key moments, the data, and where the interviewer got it completely wrong.
on the NSS document, from what I read, it appeared that China was a legitimate threat. Would you still classify China as I can't even call it an enemy, is an adversary, I guess would be a polite way to put it. Adversary number one for the United States?
No, because I don't see us in conflict with each other militarily. I think it may be a competitor.
Hmm.
Is it number one? I don't know. It depends. The problem we have with China right now is a problem of our own making. Let's stop and consider something. We're spending $1 trillion a year on the defense budget. That doesn't even address the intelligence operations and the so-called black budget. So you're talking about at least 1.5 to 1.6 trillion every year on the so-called national security state.
Right.
The Chinese spend $20 billion a year cornering the market on rare earths.
Hmm.
Who is more powerful?
China.
China, exactly.
While the United States is dumping a staggering $1.6 trillion a year into the black hole of the national security state, China is spending a mere $20 billion to corner the market on rare earths. Let's be clear on the numbers. The US defense budget for fiscal year 2026 is a whopping $1.42 trillion. And China? Their official budget is around $231 billion. And even the most generous Western estimates put it under $500 billion. America is outspending China by at least 3 to 1. Yet, as Macgregor puts it, there's a hostage situation.
Right now, we're in the unfortunate position of having opened our mouths and taken a step down the road to disaster without first asking some important questions. If we impose sanctions on country X, what are the consequences?
Hmm.
Does country X sell us something that's vital to us? Are we dependent upon country X, whoever that may be? It doesn't
Mhm.
appear when one looks at the imposition of these tariffs that anybody sat down and did a systematic analysis of all these countries. I mean,
Hmm.
remember, we've been imposing tariffs on everybody. And on the grounds of what? Oh, we're a victim? We're the people that everyone should love? I mean, here Trump gave a stupid speech at Davos saying,
Hmm.
well, the Danes aren't very grateful, are they? We helped to defeat, or we, quote unquote, won World War II. Therefore, the Danes owe us. This is sort of silly nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. So I think the first thing is that China we are dependent upon the supplies of rare earths from them. Why? Because they have a refinery. We do
Hmm.
not. There's
Mhm.
another refinery in Kazakhstan. There may
Yes.
be another one being built elsewhere, but the point is we can't get the rare earths refined into the elements, the metals, the things that we need. Gold, silver, lithium, go down the list of the periodic table, and understand that right now, because we can't get those quickly, we are not in a supply chain problem. We are in a hostage situation.
But here's the thing. China controls the supply chains America's military depends on. They own the rare earth refining. They own the critical minerals processing. Without China's goodwill, America's military grinds to a halt. Who's more powerful? The guy with the world's most strongest army? Or the guy who controls all the ammunition factories? This reality has hit home, and hit home hard. Trump went to Seoul and tried to reach some sort of accommodation with China. And you know what? He discovered he was negotiating from a position of weakness. China basically said, we'll give you a modest accommodation. That's the hostage situation that Macgregor is talking about. And that's why Washington had to soften his tone.
We are hostage to China's goodwill. And there's some Chinese bureaucrat in Inner Mongolia sitting next to the refinery saying, well, how much of this do we release to the United States this week?
Mm.
Trump went to Seoul and tried to reach some sort of accommodation, and China gave us a modest accommodation. But he discovered while he was there that he's hostage.
Yes.
And I think that's reflected in the NS, this so-called national security document. He said, well, we better ease up on China. After all, they control all of these things, not just rare earths, but electronic components, all of these things. 9 out of 10 F-35s that we're so proud of operate today because of China.
And this is the point that should worry everyone in Washington. That F-35 fighter jet, the pinnacle of American military technology, right? It's a flying testament to strategic incompetence. Each one requires around 900 pounds of rare earth materials for its advanced targeting systems, lasers, and electronics. And where do those materials come from? You guessed it, China. China controls over 80% of the global refining and processing. The Americans have the planes, but Beijing has the keys. It's not just the F-35s either. It's Tomahawk missiles, submarines, and radar systems. A 2025 report noted that 91% of Navy weapons incorporate Chinese components. And just to rub salt in the wound, in December of 2025, Beijing basically said no more rare earths for foreign militaries. While the US was busy policing the world, China was quietly buying up the world's most critical supply chains. Who's the real strategic genius here?
Yes. The critical minerals. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. This reminds me always of the British, and the British were a lot smarter before 1900 than they were afterwards. And they went to war in 1918 for no reason at all. Really, it was just foolish nonsense against Germany and Austria-Hungary. And within a day, the first Sea Lord, the man who's responsible for the Royal Navy, the most important component of the British force structure, announces that, well, we are entirely dependent upon optics from Germany for all of our sighting devices. Then they went into chemicals. Well, the Germans were the leaders in chemistry. They were the leaders in optics. We just go down the list. Well, you should have thought of that before you declared war on them.
Yeah.
In other words, there was this assumption, well, if we do go to war, it's always going to be short, sharp, decisive. Well, unfortunately, most wars between great powers are seldom short, sharp, and decisive. They tend to be long, drawn out, and attritional in nature.
Yeah.
We're not prepared for that now. So all I can say is there is no serious foundation to strategic thinking today in the United States.
But you've got to just let me push back a little bit on this one, on China. I mean, the fact is the CCP has expansionist ideas in the Asia Pacific, and America was the only sort of great power over here pushing back at that. And
Where are they?
what do you,
Where
okay,
are they
let me
compared
put
to
this way.
Smug?
What do you make?
No. Wait a minute, though. No,
Go on.
stop. You're saying they're expansionist. Where are they expanding?
Well,
What do you
we had a
expand to me?
bloody skirmish on the borders with them on India. We are the only India was the last, the last bloody skirmish they had was with the Vietnamese in the 70s. So there are expansionist ideas over there. Taiwan is obviously one area as well.
No. Taiwan is part of China. That's
One
ridiculous.
China policy,
The
right?
people there are Chinese for the most part.
Hmm.
And as far as India is concerned, you've had border problems with the Chinese almost from the outset. There has
Yep.
never been a fundamental agreement as to where that border runs through the Himalayas. And sometimes you've done well, and sometimes they've gotten the better of you. You know that.
Again, Colonel Macgregor is right, but let me be direct about what's actually happening here. India inherited the McMahon Line and other borders that Britain imposed without Chinese consent during the colonial era. These aren't legitimate boundaries. They're colonial artifacts. Yet, India is now using these illegitimate British-drawn lines to frame China as an aggressor. Think about that. India got colonized, exploited, and had its borders carved up by Europeans for centuries. Britain extracted wealth, resources, and dignity. But who does the interviewer blame? China. Not the British, not the Europeans, China, a non-European power that's actually willing to work with India on equal terms to solve this issue. That's the real story. It's not about Chinese expansionism. It's about India directing all its geopolitical anger at China, while completely ignoring the actual colonizers who carved them up. The border disputes are real, but they stem from colonial era boundary drawing, not some new Chinese aggression. Now, the interviewer brings up Vietnam, and this comes up a lot, right? China's last military conflict was with Vietnam in 1979, as he mentioned. And here's the thing, that conflict is actually the perfect evidence against the expansionist narrative. China didn't try to conquer Vietnam, it was a 1 month punitive strike in response to Vietnam invading Cambodia and toppling that regime, a regime that China supported. After 1 month, China withdrew. They didn't try to hold territory. They didn't try to occupy Vietnam. The borderlines didn't change significantly, and the pre war status quo remained. If China wanted to expand, why would they pull out? Because territorial imperialism is economically dumb. China was making a political point, not grabbing land. The real driver of that conflict was the Soviet Union. Vietnam had just signed a mutual defense treaty with Moscow, and China was concerned about Soviet expansion, not pursuing territorial ambitions. And as for Taiwan, calling it expansion, that's just ridiculous. This is a domestic issue, a remnant of a civil war. The vast majority of people in Taiwan are ethnically Chinese. You can argue about the politics, but framing it as territorial conquest, that's just ridiculous. Macgregor nails the bigger picture. Territorial imperialism is economically stupid. China is focused on becoming economically strong, on wealth, and strategic leverage. They watched the British Empire go broke holding on to India and the US sink trillions into pointless wars. They're not going to make that same mistake.
Yes.
I can't fix that. That's a matter for you and the Chinese. But I don't think the Chinese aspire to march into India and to try to rule that place. It'd be insane to do so.
Yeah.
I don't think the Chinese want to rule other peoples around the world. What they want to be is enormously wealthy, and that's what they're becoming. And they're going to leverage their wealth for strategic advantage, not necessarily on the ground. Territorial imperialism is a loser. It's a dumb idea. That's why the British should have got pulled out of India at the latest after World War One. But they didn't. They stayed because everything's mortgaged to vanity.
Right.
All of our overseas commitments right now are truly mortgaged to vanity. No one in Korea or Japan believes the Chinese want to invade them or going to go to war with them. The Vietnamese, they made it very clear what they're going to do if the Chinese even consider such a thing. So the point is, and then here's another thing to consider. Let's assume I'm wrong. Let's assume the Chinese are interested in territorial expansion. What's the best solution to it? Historically, let it happen, because empires always overextend themselves. The Japanese overextended themselves. Everyone was upset and excited when the Japanese expanded. But the truth is, the further afield from Japan they moved, the further away from Manchuria and Korea they moved, what happened? They were losing money, they were losing soldiers, and they gained nothing.
When you say let it happen, you mean it by an American prism. I'm sure the sovereignty of those countries, they wouldn't want it to happen.
Of course not. But the point is, it's a great power. Instead of challenging another great power that could easily escalate to the nuclear level, don't stand in the way of your opponent when he's making mistakes. The Chinese very intelligently have watched us make mistake after mistake after mistake. And where do they sit right now? The Japanese are dumping our debt. The Swedes dump our debt. Everyone is basically running a fire sale on treasury bonds. How much longer can we go on? I don't think it's a good outlook for us. So what do you do if you're Chinese? Do you challenge us militarily? Why? Why bother? We'll sink ourselves.
And this is the endgame. This is the checkmate that the interviewer in his little bubble of military posturing completely misses. The foundation of American power isn't just military, it's the dollar. And the foundation is cracking. Macgregor mentions a fire sale on treasury bonds. He's not wrong. In April 2025, reports came out about an alarming bond market fire sale as countries got nervous about their exposure to US assets. America's biggest foreign creditor, Japan, which holds over $1.1 trillion in US debt, has started selling. They're not the only ones either. China, as I mentioned before in the previous video, the UK, everyone is slowly backing away. Why would China start a war with the US when they can just sit back and watch it sink itself into debt? Every F-35 built, every overseas base maintained, it's all paid for with borrowed money that the world is becoming less and less willing to lend. China is playing the long game. They're watching America make mistake after mistake. Just like Macgregor said, they don't need to fire a single shot. So there you have it, a masterclass in strategic thinking from Colonel Macgregor, and a textbook example of clueless journalism. The interviewer came looking for a fight and got a lesson in 21st century power dynamics. The reality is, America's biggest threat isn't a Chinese tank. It's in its own arrogance and refusal to see the world as it is, not as it wishes it were. Mortgage to vanity, as Macgregor put it, and the bill is coming due. What do you think? Is Macgregor right? Is the US in a hostage situation of its own making? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to watch the full interview, as I said, I've linked it in the description. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching. Until next time, bye.